You know, one of the things that happens, I want to make it more like a conversation type study thing. What I do ask is, if I don't know something, I'll tell you. You know, I don't have a problem not knowing something. If I teach something that is wrong and I know that is wrong, I will come back and fix it. I don't have a problem fixing that either. One of the things that happens in the Hebrew roots. Last year I was blessed to go to 9 countries, and I saw the same patterns in every single one. People come in, they are wounded, they are hurt, and we have to stop serving God with past hurts. Everything's supposed to be renewed, everything's supposed to be anew. But yet we come into the gospel, and then we're okay in the church in the sense of we're ignorant, we don't know any better, so we're happy. Then we find out that many things are not the way we thought, and then we go through the process of loss and deceit and stages of grief. Say. I've always said, and I submitted this to many congregations. They never listen, but I submitted this, that any new person that comes in, you need to identify where they're at in the stages of grief.
Yes.
Because we don't think about it. Too many people leaving the system of religion, and specifically Christianity, can be extremely painful in many levels. So you don't know when you come over, a new person comes in, and if you don't know the stages of grief, you're not going to be able to relate with that person. You're not going to be able to bring the type of healing they need. You know? And some people that I know have been in the anger stage for 25 years. They don't change. Blame everything, blame everybody. Everything's either from Rome or from Babylon. It comes to a point that we have to move on and say, let it go. Let it go. I sing that song that I heard for almost a year, But it's so true. So what happens is that the Bible tells us a few things that we never focused on. Let me tell you why I study the temple. Is that okay? I'm not going to tell you why you should, which I think God commanded it. But I'm going to tell you why I studied. Now, understand my trajectory in the Torah has been like 21 years this year. And I still don't know anything. I'm learning. I got a teacher. I got a teacher who's been doing this 40 years. And I study with him every week when I'm home. Why? Because I recognize that we don't have teachers. We come to the Hebrew roots and we don't want anybody teaching us. Listen, in Christianity we have discipleship programs. And even though we didn't agree with the pastor, we still submitted to the congregation. In Judaism, if you go to Judaism, they tell you to get a foundation on the faith, get a teacher. When you go to school, you start in kindergarten, and then you go to first grade, and then third grade, and second grade, right? Now, eventually, along the way, one of those teachers is your favorite. And when you're in third grade, and then the end of the year comes, you can't even imagine surviving fourth grade without your third grade teacher until you get to fourth grade, and then you don't think about her anymore.
Yes.
Right? So my question is, where am I in your stage of your walk? The problem is that we have many teachers that they want to own the people.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's the problem.
Yes.
So now, in order for me to keep you happy, I got to manipulate you or come up with some crazy studies to keep you interested.
Right.
I recognize I have a role. You see, and I learned that from the temple principles. I have a role. The problem is, we don't know which role we have in the kingdom. Okay? So I also recognize that, for example, I practice self-defense. And although I'm a master in 3 systems, I still got teachers. Because you never know enough. You're always learning. You're always training. The Bible's the same way. And one of the biggest mistakes we have, and I'm going to say it straight up, because with all due respect to every single of you here, with all the stuff that I have to put up with every day for 21 years, I think I've earned the right to speak my mind.
Yes.
We have to grow up a little bit and recognize that we need instruction at times. We need to be guided for a little time until you have a foundation, and then I have to pass the baton to the next teacher who will take you to the next level. As a teacher, I cannot be afraid for you to just leave my website.
Right.
I can't be mad. I got to say, okay, as long as you're not mad at me, or as long as you're not putting me down over there just because you think you know everything,
right.
How can I help you to recommend you to another teacher who can fulfill the need that you're looking for today? But we don't work as a team, so we don't know the tools, we don't know the roles, we don't know the gifts. We don't know them. We don't care about gifts. We only care about knowledge.
Yeah.
And with all due respect, we are falling in love with the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and we're not eating anymore of the tree of life. And that's a problem. So instead of me trying to do teachings having rants, which I usually sometimes do on Facebook when I just see so many people fighting over stupid stuff. You know, look, they shape up the earth. If it is, we're still going to have homeless, widows, Levites, and all that stuff. Okay, fine. So that's a topic you like? Not a problem. Don't make it a salvation issue. And that's not the only topic we talk about. Fine. You can hang out with me. That's not a problem. We can talk about the Lord all you want. You like to study that stuff on your own time? No problem. Just leave me alone. I don't believe in it. That's not a problem. But then the things that we should focus in, we don't. And now we are losing the balance. So what I'm going to do for the first hour, if you allow me, is let's go back to what God says. Is that okay? Let's learn from God's house, His structure, His order. So repeat with me, order. Order. We just want to find out about God's order. How does He work? And then in your congregations, like for example, one of the things that I've done in the last 4 years now is have temple courses. I do one, a big one in Orlando. I'm doing now local ones in different areas. And the whole premise and the whole idea is that if you're a leader of a congregation like Richard is, that if some of your group comes to my course and they bring information and you don't necessarily agree or you haven't researched it, you don't have to try to fight with them. You can pick up the phone and say, hey Rico, maybe they didn't get what I was trying to say, but you know the source. And you can, hey Rico, you know, some of our members maybe misunderstood, oh, what did you mean by this? Or how can I get the research so I can be a part with them to help you? Because it's not fair that you are leading all these people every week. I show up, I drop a bomb and I leave. Then you have to pick up the pieces. You know why? You know why I say this? Because I used to be one of those guys dropping bombs and leaving. And I had to repent, I had to change. And I don't want to do that anymore. I want to be able to, when you invite me, you feel safe to know that I wanted there to edify the kingdom, challenge you in a good way, try to bring us to a high level of understanding together, you know, and then if you don't agree with me, that's fine. Just because you don't agree with me doesn't mean that I'm wrong or doesn't mean that you're wrong. Maybe I have information you haven't gotten your hands into yet. So instead of defending our positions, which has become that, listen, we are a reflection of the political parties going on right now. Seriously, we are. We are acting exactly like that. Because we're supposed to be the image of God on the earth. And we're not becoming a good image. All we're doing is, then we worry, we wonder how come they're acting. They are an image of the whole society.
I never voted.
I'm sorry?
I never voted.
True. So
then you can't complain.
there you go. So what we need
complain.
so what we need today is to understand God's order. What is it that He expects of us? What is it that it matters to Him? And if it matters to Him, then the decision is, what am I going to do? You know, if you're going to argue with me about something, debate me, you're welcome. You better be on point with it. Because I study it all the time. I still don't know. I'm still learning. So what are we getting by debating? Nothing. Who's got the bigger ego? You know, this is a big question. And I asked this to someone who had a position about something. And I asked, I said, look, man, let me ask you a question. Let's say that we argue and we debate. But are we still going to be willing to help the homeless and the widows? Are we willing to put our differences aside and help those people in need? Because that is our calling.
That's our calling.
That is really our calling.
Absolutely.
It's not the books. I got 2,000 of them.
That's right.
The books don't save no one. The books are supposed to educate me so I can use those tools to help people. When we use the books of knowledge to defeat, to belittle, and to destroy people, then we got a problem.
That's right.
So what I've done, I've gone back to basics. Okay, so what does God say? It says, can someone find Ezekiel 44:15, please? 44:15. I'm going to read this one, and then, but I want to know who are they, because it says they shall, the specific people. Okay, I'll remind you, this is the third temple period, and it says they shall teach my people the difference between holy and the common, and show them how to distinguish between clean and unclean.
44:15.
Yes, can you read it, please?
But the priests, the Levites, the son of Zadok, who kept the charge of my sanctuary when the sons of Israel went astray from me, they shall come near to me to minister to me, and they shall stand before me to bring near to me the fat and the blood, declares Adonai Hashem.
Okay, so the Lord says, these people are sanctioned to do this. They have a role. The whole premise of the line that I want to go on this particular teaching is that God has established order in His kingdom. This is his house. If you don't believe in the temple, okay, you haven't really researched it. Because the Bible clearly established it. It's just that we come from a system of religion that has done away with it. So that now it's hard for us because, let me ask you a question. And when I ask these questions, I'm not trying to sound like belittling in any way, It gives me an idea where you're at, okay? How many of you have never studied the different levels of sin and different types of sacrifices and what they're for?
Never.
Never. So, with all due respect to every single one of us, when we talk about Yeshua as being the offering, then we have to understand which one and for what. Because there are different types. You know, so therefore, as we educate ourselves, then we'll be able to understand. Oh, now I know why James told Paul to do a Nazirite vow, which includes sacrifices. And that happened 28 years after Yeshua died and resurrected. So I thought the law was done away with. What happened? You know? Okay? So there's some questions we need to ask. Okay. They shall teach my people the difference between holy and the common, show them how to distinguish between the unclean and the clean. How many congregations are teaching this? Right? One in how many? When was the last time you went to a congregation and when you started going, they start teaching you the difference between holy and profane, common and unclean? So why are we talking about the shape of the earth? That's not a commandment anywhere. Why are we talking about crazy topics?
Right.
You know? I mean, why don't we follow what he says? We say we follow the commandments, don't we? Oh, we want to follow the commandments. If it's not in the Bible, I'm not going to read it. It's here. How come we don't do that? Because it takes too much work. It talks about temple stuff that we are removed from. Repeat with me. The Bible is written for us, but not to us. Now think about that for a minute. It was written for us. The principles in the Torah apply to all of humanity, to all mankind. But you were not the original audience that Moses was talking to at that time.
Right.
So we are removed from an environment of a biblical perspective and the narrative. So that's why sometimes we don't quite understand a verse because we don't understand the culture. We do not understand the language. We don't understand the ancient cultures and its laws. So it's easier for us because we come from Christianity and not everything there was bad. Because if it was, we wouldn't be here today.
Right.
There was something there that helped us get here today. But what we do, we bash everything over there. And then we go to the other extreme and we bash everything in Judaism. But yet, how many of you even know the difference between the Gemara and the Mishnah?
Right.
Come on now. Because we talk about all the Judaism stuff, but what is the difference between the Gemara and the Mishnah? What is biblical law? You see, these are the things that I want to bring out so we can have better decision making. And instead of dividing over things that we don't quite know, you know, because I got to say something. Even some of my friends that are teachers, they're not spending time on some of these principles. Why? It's not their role.
Right.
They're taking care of all the areas. So I understand my role, and I want to share my role with you. Is that making sense?
Amen.
And I want this to be edifying. We can have all the questions, and if you don't agree with me, that's not a problem. Don't feel like you have to agree with me. You know, but I don't want to debate. We can have a conversation.
Right.
You know, and I'll share what I believe or what I see. And if after the end of the night you don't like it, that's not a problem. Can we still break bread together? Can we still pray for one another? Can we still help those people in need? That's really what matters.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, and I have to make that decision myself because I used to be extreme in many areas. And I have to learn to, okay, just because I'm right doesn't mean I'm right. My wife taught me that. Rico, just because you're right doesn't mean you're right.
Right.
You know, the way you're doing it is not getting anybody here. Okay? All right. In controversy, they shall act as judges, and they shall decide according to my judgments, right? So the Lord has given judicial authority to a particular group of people. That's what it says, right? It says, they shall keep my laws and my statutes regarding all my appointed festivals, and they shall keep my Sabbath holy. Sabbaths, the plural, because they're more than one,
Right.
you know? So, who are the people in question here? The priests, correct?
Right.
Do we have a temple today?
No.
No, but we still have Levites.
Right.
Okay, so my question is this. The Lord has a structure. He has a judicial body. It was called the Sanhedrin Council. Okay? All the men of the Great Assembly when they came back from Persia and Babylon. There were 120. Ezra, Nehemiah, Malachi, Zechariah. You know, all those guys. Haggai. There were 96 prophets of the 120 men, there were 96 prophets. That's crazy, right? Just nod your head or something. Okay. So what we have here is a judicial body. How many of you understand that the Hebraic roots or the Torah observant movement today, we are in chaos because we don't have a judicial body?
That's right.
Because if we have, I mean, look, in every congregation and in every denomination, how you doing, brother?
Hello.
In every denomination, what's your name?
Joe.
Thanks, Joe, for coming. In every denomination, when there was a problem within the denomination, they went to their board.
Right.
Every denomination. And that worked within their system. Now, I'm not talking about their theology. I'm not talking about their methods. They understood that they needed a body of leaders to, if they got corrupted, that's besides the point.
Right.
But I'm talking about the structure. You follow? When we come to the truth of the Torah the Torah of my King, and we cannot organize ourselves to have a group of body of leaders to bring order to the kingdom of God with all this truth, we got a problem.
That's right.
Okay, what did Ephraim do that caused a shame? Now I'm going to go to the next one. Ezekiel 43. This is why I study the temple. Okay, it says, as for you, mortal, describe the temple to the house of Israel. Now, in some of your Bibles, when you go back and look it up, it says, describe the house to the house of Israel. Because the word house is an idiom for the Beit HaMikdash, the temple. Okay? It says, describe the house to the house of Israel. Now, talking to the Jews, it's talking to the house of Israel. Why? And let them measure the pattern. Now, I was in Victorville last weekend. This weekend, I just went by. And it just so I did this teaching. It just so happened that the gentleman who invited me, he's an engineer. He's engineer architect. And it was amazing. Because I said, okay, who's an architect here? He said, I am. I said, oh my gosh. First time I do this teaching with an architect here. He goes, when you do a plan, do you seal it? He goes, yes. You put your name on it. He goes, yes. What happens if someone takes that blueprint and they alter it and they change it? He goes, that's illegal. It's against the law. I could sue them because no one has the authority to alter the blueprint or the pattern. This word right here, pattern, it's a Hebrew word tavnit. That's a very important word because the word tavnit means blueprint. In other words, the tabernacle was God's blueprint. He is the architect. Okay? He revealed the blueprint to David, and it was Solomon who built it. And he also revealed that blueprint to Ezekiel. I got this one. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
You don't want to have to point up.
It's clear his role. He's a facilitator. Seriously. Sees me point. He doesn't ask. He goes and looks for the tools that I need to do my job. That's exactly what we need.
That's right.
You see, we need, look, when you drive in the interstate, I was driving over here and I'm thinking about all this stuff. I think about this all the time. You know, it's amazing how we drive in better order than we do the kingdom. If you infringe in somebody else's lane without putting the sign and just run through, you're going to have road rage. Someone's going to get mad at you and follow you and want to beat you up. Because it's a car, you see? And the car can be a use of force.
Right.
Even lethal force. So you cut someone off, they're going to take that as, you infringe in my lane. I'm minding my own business. I'm not breaking the law. And if you all go at the same speed limit, right? Or at least with the flow, you know, and you put the signal when you want to infringe in someone's lane, they decide whether they want to let you go through or not. There's order. When there's order on the highway, there's no accidents, right?
Right.
Because everybody stays on their what? Their lane.
Lane.
How come we don't learn that in that kingdom? What is our lane? What is my lane? What is your lane? I'm not an organizational leader right now, a congregation. I think I'm being trained for that. That's why I do my tours to Israel. That's why I do my courses every year. That's why I do certain things. But I travel. That's what I'm gifted to today. But I'm preparing myself for the time when I can't travel, that I'm going to have to deal with people every day, and I'm trying to understand that. You give people roles, and you empower in their roles, they'll respond.
That's right.
The only issue you have is when someone is not being gifted in a gift, and you put them to do their work in an area you know they're going to fail, then you're not helping them.
Right.
God understood that. And that's why He gave a role in the Bible. And once I get to something here, you're going to see what I mean. What happened with Korah? When Korah, he wanted to do somebody else's job.
That's right.
Do you know what job? You know what Korah's job was?
Yeah. Very good.
He used to carry the ark.
Carry the ark, yeah.
His family, his job was to carry the ark of the
That's right.
Lord.
That's right.
No, he wanted Moses' job
Yep.
and Aaron's job. He died. Now, but this is very telling. Who did he recruit? Think about this. Who did he recruit?
His family.
Yeah, but which one?
Sons of Reuben.
Reuben.
Sons of Reuben.
Why is Reuben so important? People always overlook that. He was supposed to be the firstborn.
Firstborn. It was passed away.
He went to the one he knew he can convince
Yeah.
to rebel because he will see the priest says, yo man, that should have been me,
Yeah.
right? And then Korah says, yo, if we put you in power, you can choose me as the high priest.
Yep.
Right,
Dysfunctional family.
Yep.
right.
Yep.
You see, Israel is a dysfunctional family. This whole thing doesn't surprise me. Israel is a dysfunctional family. They wanted to kill Joseph. Benjamin, he married a Canaanite. Judah married a Canaanite. Reuben slept with his father's handmaid. I mean, who wants to be part of Israel? You know?
That gives us hope, though.
I mean, yeah, true, it's true. I'll build you up. I'll build you up in a minute. Good one. You know, but you notice when they went to Egypt, right, to get the grain, Simeon stayed behind. And they brought all the grain back to Jacob. Says, yo man, should we take Benjamin back? You notice, they're not rushing back to go get the other guy.
Yep.
You know, that only goes to show you. You know why? Because there were 12 brothers from 4 different mothers.
Right.
Right.
Only one father.
Right.
Isn't that what Paul is saying?
Yeah.
That we all have one father?
Father, right.
Same thing. He's talking to Gentiles who are outside the kingdom. They have no covenant. They have no role. They have no calling. They have no job in the kingdom. The people in Israel at the time in the first century didn't want them.
Right.
And Paul is trying to let them know, you don't understand. This is nothing new. The family's always been dysfunctional. But we all have one father. So we are all the same then. We all sons and daughters from different mothers, but we all have father, the creator. You follow?
Right.
All right. So it says, let them measure the pattern and let them be ashamed of their iniquities. But what iniquities? What did they do? What was the sin of Ephraim? They changed their priesthood.
Yep.
They changed the location of the temple.
Right.
They changed the feast days.
Feast days, yep.
Sound familiar?
Yes.
That's exactly what the Ephraimite movement has done.
Right, right.
And I've told that to Ephraimite communities everywhere. They don't like it very much.
Yep.
Because I tell them, oh, you call yourself Ephraim. Let me tell you what you've done. The temple is exactly telling you how to get back to order.
Yeah, amen.
Because that's exactly what led us into the dispersion.
That's right.
So we are coming back to the same cycle. Oh, I don't follow the rabbinical calendar. It's not rabbinical. They call it that it's not.
Right, right.
You know, no, we want to follow our own calendar. Wait a minute. Everybody go to Numbers chapter 18.
Amen.
I know exactly right.
Numbers 18, I need some readers for me, would you? Please?
And Yah said to Aaron, you and your sons and your father's house with you are to bear the crookedness against the set apart place. And you and your sons with you are to bear the crookedness against your priesthood.
That's one, right?
Yeah.
Now let's think about what that verse says. To put in perspective, when we say, oh, the Levitical priesthood and the sons of Aaron are done away with. Okay, so you know what's going to happen eventually. I got to get up because my body hurts right now. You have no idea.
Oh, yes, I do.
Oh, man, my body's hurting from all over. Anyway, so in Numbers 18:1, how many of you have studied the genealogy of Aaron? My brother has. Okay. This is a problem because when we read the book of Hebrews, which I know is a question to every single one of you,
Right.
so you say, well, the Levitical priesthood is done away with. But yet, the context of Hebrews is not talking about the Levites. It's talking about the sons of Aaron.
Aaron,
So you have Kohath, Gershon, Merari. You have those 3 brothers. Levi is the father. Then out of Kohath comes Amram.
right.
Out of Amram comes Moses, Aaron, and Miriam.
Miriam.
Out of Aaron comes the sons of Aaron.
Yes.
And then in the Bible, the sons of Aaron are the one chosen for the temple service.
Right.
The Levites are to help them do the service.
That's right.
Now we have 24 priestly courses. 1 Chronicles 24. Okay? So when the book of Hebrews is talking about, it's not Levi, Kohath, Merari, Gershon, or Amram, or Moses or Miriam. It's talking about Aaron.
Yeah, right.
So all the sons of Aaron are Levites, but not all the Levites come from the family of Aaron.
Aaron, right, right.
If we understand that one thing alone, When you read the book of Hebrews, it makes a lot more sense.
Oh, yeah.
But again, what's the common denominator? We don't study the temple.
Right.
So if we don't study the temple, which, how many commandments, if you were here today, don't say it, earlier. Out of the 613 commandments, how many of them deal with the temple?
That's a good question.
How many deal with what?
With the temple.
Say
With
the
the
ones
temple.
that pertain to the priest.
Remember, the feast deals with temple.
Right.
Sabbath deal with temple. New moon deals with temple.
Right.
Okay?
All but 10?
271.
That's a lot.
That's over a third.
Right.
That's over a third of all the commandments.
Right.
And that's the area that we least study.
Wow,
Then no wonder we have problems.
right.
You know, and that's something that when I was studying with my teacher, when I was studying, by the way, I don't know if you know my teacher, Joseph Good.
Oh, I've heard of Joseph Good.
Who knows of Joseph? Joseph Good, if you hear somewhere around here that he doesn't believe in Yeshua, it's not true. He does believe strongly in the Messiah. Okay, because there's a word going around, he doesn't believe in Yeshua, and that's a lie. He does believe it. I'll bear witness to that, because I've asked him.
I've heard that the rabbis in Jerusalem would like him to become one, and he
Of
says,
course.
I will not abandon
Exactly.
Yeshua."
650. So would you agree with me that we say we follow the commandments, but we're really not?
We don't.
Because we're not understanding a third of them.
Right.
All right? That's not including the ones that only apply to women or for government or for the land or for whatever. Okay? Okay, so now, it says, when they are ashamed, I gotta use the tool that he gave me. When they are ashamed of all that they have done, change the calendar, change the feast, change the priesthood, change the location of the temple. There are people saying today, within the Hebrew roots, and it's blowing up in Christianity, that the temple was in the city of David. They're moving it from the Temple Mount to the city of David. No joke. And they're running off on research from a guy who's not an archaeologist. And the sad thing is that no matter how much research we can prove and show, which is so much is ridiculous, it's not going to change their mind. I mean, that only shows the lack of understanding of the temple. Okay? Alright, so it says, when they are ashamed of all that they have done, make known to them the plan of the temple, its arrangements, its exits, its entrances, its whole form, all its ordinances, its entire plan, and all its laws, and write it down in their sight, so that they may observe and follow the entire plan and all its ordinances. Read this with me, would you? 12. This is the
law of the temple.
the whole territory.
Top of the mountain.
On the what?
Top of the
Top
mountain.
of the mountain.
Okay, the Temple Mount is the top of that mountain. It's not the city of David. Okay? The city of David lies below. And look for a topographical map. You look at it's very simple. I mean, Charles Warren came up with a topographical map back in the 1800s. You know? So, therefore, don't move that mountain all around, shall be most holy. This is the law of the temple. It's a law. Right? So how come we don't study that?
Right.
You need some good teachers.
Well, the thing about it is, sadly, because the church system, and we all come back from Christianity, have taught us that the temple's no longer relevant, then we don't embrace it. Because in reality, we're trying to talk about Yeshua and what he did for us, thank God, but we don't understand how he did it. So therefore, now we throw everything together. Now, the first verse my brother read, what does it say? That the priests are in charge of everything related to the temple, right?
Yes.
That means if they do something wrong, they bear the guilt. That's how serious it is in the temple. The Lord says, guys, I'm going to have a group of people. They're going to be in charge of separating the holy and the profane, the clean and the unclean. If they mess up, they're going to bear the guilt. But you have to obey the commandments. But they're the ones who's going to allow you, facilitate for you to come near me. But I'm going to give them the burden of getting the responsibility. Go to the second one, please. Please.
Bring with you your brothers, the tribe of Levi, the tribe of your father, to join you and serve you while you and your sons are with you before the tent of witness.
Okay, so it says that the Levites have a role now. The priests, they're the ones leading the people in the time of the temple. I'm giving you the examples how God establishes order in his kingdom, okay? That's really the essence of the teaching. And then he says, well, you cannot do it alone. The Levites are going to help you run the whole thing. But there are perimeters of holiness. There are things that you can do that they cannot do. Just like Israel can do things that a stranger cannot do. Just like a Levite can do things that an Israelite cannot do. You follow?
Right.
So here you see that God establishing His kingdom, order. You know, these guys are responsible for this. They're guilty if they don't do it the right way. That's the whole responsibility. So it's like when the Supreme Court of America makes a decision, a unilateral decision between themselves, and it becomes law, you don't bear the guilt. You know that, right? They're the ones who bear the guilt of whatever they did, whether it's righteous or unrighteous. People don't know that. The leadership is the one who's supposed to do that. Okay, go to the next one, please.
And they shall guard your charge and the duty of all the tent, but they do not come near the furnishings of the set apart place and the altar,
Okay.
lest they die, both they and you.
Okay, so now, this is a very important one. So the God establishes order in His kingdom, right? He says, you are in charge of these things. Let's pretend this is the altar. There's the holy vessels over there, and there's the temple over here. The Levites could only do the temple function here. The Sanhedrin Council was composed of 71, according to Exodus 18 and also Deuteronomy 17, right? Numbers. So they had 23 priests, they had 23 Levites, they had 23 Israelites. And then you have the vice president and the Nasi, the president of the Sanhedrin Council. 71 in total. Why do you have 23 of different types of people? Because it's like saying I'm a lawyer, right? So I'm a family law, you know, criminal law. In other words, even though they study law, well, they specialize in different areas.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
Even though they're lawyers, but you're not going to get a family law lawyer to go do a case of murder,
Right.
you know, defending you from murder or whatever, homicide or whatever. Okay, so in the temple it was the same way. So you have the choir. The choir was part of the Levites' job. Well, the priest had no say in what happened with the Levites and how they did their service. But the Levites had no say as to how the priest, in other words, there's a Levite there singing and looking at the priest going, oh man, he's not doing it right. He's messing it all up. No, that didn't happen. In other words, even if he can slaughter the animal better, manipulate the blood better, or maybe throw the animals on the altar better, it didn't matter. Yeah, that's your job. If you come and encroach on this one's job, you die. And the priest will let you. That's how serious this stuff was. So why don't we let other people encroach on the things that God called us? Because we don't even know our roles.
That's right.
You know, look at, in your congregation, any other leaders or groups out here? Leaders? You know, in your congregation, the problems in your congregation, 90% to 80% of the time is when somebody either wants to do the job better than you,
Oh yeah.
or when someone wants to encroach on somebody else's job. And then people get offended, and then they don't talk to each other, and then you gotta try to put band-aids all the time.
More ways than others.
Right? But if we study God's order, right? It's like I always tell people when I teach. People travel hours to go hear me. I'm going, man, didn't you have something better to do? Because I don't travel that far to hear me, you know? But they come over and they travel, they hear it, and I'm going like, that. They're making the effort. You follow what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But many times when we teach, we're there all day. And I don't care how good you think the teaching is. It comes during the time in the teaching that you get hungry.
Right.
And the most important person is the cook. I'm telling you, there comes a point that you're going, shut up, I want to go eat. And you don't remember the cook, right? You don't remember my teaching while you're eating. You say, no, I'm hungry. And then afterwards, who's going to drive me home? In other words, if we only understood that we have a place in God's kingdom, we're not going to be fighting with each other for the roles that God gave us. And you know, I want nothing better than for the Lord to raise up other men and women to go teach. Not a problem. I'll facilitate books, resources, whatever. I don't have to be right on everything, you know. But the problem is when you encroach on somebody else's job. And there's two types of messengers, and I want you to really pay attention to this because a really good friend of mine showed me this and it's stuck with me for the last 15 years. He says, Rico, there's two types of messengers. And if you really take heed to this, when you go on Facebook, you'll be able to identify one from the other. He says, there's a messenger who is self-appointed. The self-appointed messenger, the only way he can get people to hear him is by minimizing somebody else,
Right.
minimizing somebody else's message,
Right.
talking sensationalism in order to, because it's like fast food. You know, you want something fast,
Right.
something exciting. It's like coffee shoots you. Oh, I'm excited. I learned this new, right? So, but the problem is that now he's self-appointed. He has no message.
Right.
He's the only way to get the attention is minimizing you or you or you, so that now he feels important. But yet, when you pay attention to him, when that message that he has there, temporal, ends, then you have nothing. Okay? And then there's God-appointed messenger. You know, the Lord's appointed messenger doesn't care about his own,
That's
you know,
right.
his own message. He only cares about conveying the message the Creator wanted to give him.
Amen.
He's not looking to make himself a great name. He wants to only lift up the name of the Creator or Yahweh on high. You follow what I mean?
Oh, Hashem.
Now, I was leaning towards the self-appointed one, and the Lord corrected me to say, okay, I need to learn to become a God-appointed one. And that's why I'm no longer competing with anybody.
That's right.
I don't need to, because Brad has he has a role. You know, Bill has a role. All these guys have roles. I just need to come alongside them and fill in the gaps in the areas they don't cover, so that we can complement one another.
Oh, Hashem.
You know, try self-defense and jiu-jitsu one day. You learn that you don't know anything. No, I'm serious. When you learn self-defense and you go train with these people, and you realize real quickly that anybody can get you, and you have to leave that ego at the door. You have to just get it all off, because if not, you're going to get so frustrated you're never going to come back. And that's what's happening with people in the Hebrew roots. They leave and go back to church.
Right.
Why? There's no love anymore.
Right.
All we want is fast food theology. Something quick, something spectacular, something like, you know, everything's anyway. So we need to focus on what God called us to do for a change. All right? So can you go to the next verse, please?
Sure. Verse 4, and they shall be joined with you and guard the duty to the tent of meeting for all the service of the tent, but a stranger does not come near you. And you shall guard the duty of the set apart place and the duty of the altar, so that there be no more wrath on the children of Israel. And see, I myself have taken your brothers, the Levites, from the midst of the children of Israel, a gift to you, given by Yah, to do the service of the tent of
There
meeting.
you go, a gift to you. How many of you never considered studying ancient Near Eastern grant covenants? It's a gift. When the king will give a gift to somebody, it's a gift. As long as the king lives, this is important. As long as the king lives, that gift is a grant. No one can take it away. If you would challenge the gift I give her, then you are declaring war against me. Because I bear my authority and giving you that gift.
Wow.
This is legal now. This is not theology. That's legal. You know, this is legal. So what we need to remember is that when it comes to God's order and temple, we need to align with Him. We have to consider that we're no longer in the systems of religion that we want a Messiah to look the way we want him to look like. To the point that he looks like blonde with blue eyes and long hair. When wearing long hair in the first century was actually a shameful thing.
That's right. That's right.
They put the whole white garments with a red stripe. That's actually the senators, the way they look in the Roman Empire. I mean, completely different than the real identity of Messiah. You follow? But that's another conversation.
Oh, Hashem.
So as we see that in those verses, it's showing the responsibility of those people who are in charge of the holy things, right? So the problem is that we don't know what the holy things and what encroachment is. Encroachment is it's a very sinful, it's a very, very serious thing in the Bible. It's called Ma'al. Remember the king of Babylon when he drank of the holy vessels of the temple? And he died that night, remember?
Yeah.
Because he was immoral, and he took something separated for the service of God, and he decided to touch it and become arrogant with it. He died. He was encroaching on the sancta, encroaching on the holy things. The verses that my brother read tells you that no stranger can come close to him. But yet we have this theology, and I know some of you may not like it, that we can go into the Holy Holies now. I'm sorry, that's theologically incorrect. Biblically, there's never been a time into anyone in the temple period can go into the Holy Holies. And by the way, not even Yeshua went into the Holy Holies on the earth.
That's right.
He resurrected. After resurrection, not once did he spoke anything against the temple.
Yep.
Don't you think that's kind of strange?
Right.
For 40 days. And Luke tells us that he spoke about, Luke chapters 1 and 2, You know, he tells us in the introduction that he spoke about every event in order how they happened in the life of Yeshua. And never once says, yo guys, I resurrected. It's over. Let's go in there, storm the temple, and kick them out. Never did that. You have to ask that question. Why? You know, so either we are not really understanding these principles because of where we come from, or we're missing something. Is this making sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so with these verses that I'm going to read now, hopefully I'm able to address something that is going around in the Hebrew roots that I think is detrimental and is going to be, and I want to make sure you know that I'm blowing the shofar, letting you know not to say it. Because if you do, I stand as a witness that I told you better. Okay? The altar of God represents authority. The Bible has always been about the altar, creation. The first war between brothers was because of the altar, the way you approach God. You know, Noah comes out of the ark, he builds an altar.
Mm-hmm.
Abraham builds altars. You know, they all build altars. They represented the authority of God on the earth. Okay? Now, let me go back one. Let me go back to. Many people saying that, well, the temple, the third temple is going to be the Antichrist temple. I completely disagree with that. Well, you know, he's going to sit in the temple as if he is God, and you know, that means that the temple cannot be of God. Well, clearly you're not really studying temple history, because the temple was holy, and then Antiochus came in, and then Pompey came in. They defiled the temple, but that doesn't mean the temple was not of God. It's just that the men defiled it. Let me ask you a question. Where is the only place that a king of Israel can sit anywhere there? In the temple. Because the verse in Thessalonians says that the son of perdition will come and sit in the temple as if he's God, right? That's the temple language. Where is he supposed to sit? Where does that event occur? We don't know, right? But yet we don't know, but then we say that the third temple is not of God, because the Antichrist is going to sit in it. Well, that makes no sense, because Antiochus came in and he sacrificed a pig on the altar, and then he put an image of Zeus in the temple. And then Pompey came in and he could defile it by entering the Holy of Holies. You know, was not supposed to. You know, but then he left everything intact. Okay, so this thing has happened again. The only place that someone can sit in the temple was right over here, north of the altar, right here. Only a king of the line of David can sit there. No one else. Solomon, he was north of the altar when he kneeled down and prayed to the Lord. That's it. Why can no one, not even the priest, no one can stand, no one can sit anywhere here. If the Levites who stood right here in those 3 steps, if they wanted to sit down, they needed to go to the adjacent buildings inside there. No one can do it here. That's the presence of God. You cannot do it. Okay? So, when Paul is using temple language to try to reveal the son of perdition, it's very telling, it's very significant. Herod can never go and sit there, because Herod was not of the tribe of David. Okay? So what we need to understand is, we're talking about these prophetic pictures, but he's using temple language, and we don't study the temple, to understand the prophetic picture.
Right.
It's like the book of Revelation. I mean, how can you talk about the book of Revelation without understanding the feast?
Right.
Chapters 4 is about Yom Teruah. Chapters 8 is about Yom Kippur. But we never consider that way. Right? So I just want to take you there so you see that. This is the only place, right there, north of the altar, where the little arrow is somewhere, that the king of David can sit. Do you think that they never allowed, there was a king of Israel who was arrogant, he wanted to do the incense service. And the priest kicked him out.
Yep.
And he was very arrogant when he got leprosy. He got leprosy for 14 years. He could outside the camp. Dead men walking. So that's the king of Israel. What makes us think we can go in there? I don't understand. The king can sit in there, but he cannot go into the holy place and the holy holies. But now we come through Yeshua. I'm so sorry. And now we come through Yeshua. Now we feel like we can encroach in all the holy things. Okay, let me go to your house and then walk around your house without permission. You invite me to your house. And I start walking, opening all the beds, everything. And then you find me laying down in your marriage bed. How are you going to like that? How are you going to like that? Isn't that disrespectful? You're going to kick me out. Because I'm not supposed to go beyond a certain threshold. Like in this house. I can be here, this bathroom, bathroom upstairs, and that room. I don't have authority to go any other place that is private unless they give me permission and they take me themselves. That's exactly the temple. God says that strangers who are not circumcised from the nations can go this far. The Israelites can go this far. The women can go this far. The Levites can go this far. The priests can go this far. The high priest only can go beyond that point.
Right.
So if there's perfect order in God's temple, why don't we understand it? We have order in our house. But yet when it comes to the house of God, we don't want to respect it. But we want people to respect the order in our home.
That's right.
It's a microcosm. Our home is a microcosm of God's house. That's why we're supposed to be a temple.
Hashem.
To reveal His order, to reveal His holiness, to reveal His purpose. You know, that's the one thing that I get out of studying the temple. This is making sense so far? All right.
What was Revelation 4, the feast, did you say?
When it says, and then there was a heaven open, a door open in heaven, that's an idiom for Yom Teruah.
Okay.
All right. Remember I told you where he's at, right? And I'm almost done. I just want to show you a few things and then... You doing okay?
Oh, yeah, I might do it.
Oh, okay, no worries. All right. Verse 4. I want to make some highlights here. Ezekiel 44, 4-8. And he brought me by the way of the north gate to the front of the temple, and I looked, and lo, the glory of the Lord filled the temple of the Lord, and I fell on my face. I don't get it. If the third temple is of the anti-Messiah, how can the presence of God be in a defiled temple? It says the glory, the kavod. The glory of God was in the temple. The glory of God cannot dwell in a defiled temple. So I don't understand. I thought that was the Antichrist temple. By the way, I have a disagreement with my teacher. We talk about this all the time. The Jewish people are going to try. By the way, Solomon did not build the temple. He was the king whose temple was being built on. He cannot build the temple because he was not a priest. He cannot get into certain areas of the temple. You see this building right here? He cannot get into that area.
Right.
Only the priest. Josephus tells us that during the time of Herod, 11,000 priests were hired just so that they can build the temple building. They were taught to do the work. It took them a year and a half to do it. Because no Israelite can go beyond a point of holiness there. Okay? But it says, the presence of God was there, and the Lord said to me, mortal, mark well, look closely, and listen attentively to all that I shall tell you, concerning all the ordinances of the temple of the Lord, and all its laws. Yeah, 271 of them. And mark well those who may be admitted to the temple, and all those who are to be excluded from the temple. Say to the rebellious house, the house of Israel, thus says the Lord God, O house of Israel, let there be an end to your abominations. Okay? In admitting foreigners, uncircumcised in heart and flesh, to be in my sanctuary, for profaning my temple. When you offer to me the food and the fat and the blood, and broken my covenant with all your abominations. Are you bored? Are you like thinking? Now, Genesis 1 and 3. Have you ever considered Genesis 1 and 3 as a temple text? It's a temple text. It's really amazing. When you connect Genesis 1 and 3 to Revelation, it's incredible. You know, I don't have time to cover that today, but hopefully in the future it will allow me to come back and do it. The book of Exodus. There are 16 chapters in the book of Shemot dealing with the tabernacle. 16. From chapters 35, I think it's this week's Torah portion, right?
Terumah.
Tehumah. Yeah, Tehumah. We read a whole Torah portion, yet we don't know anything about offerings. You know? And that's something that I want to encourage you to continue to search and look into. And get the right resources for that, okay? Google Rabbi don't work. You know, people get on YouTube and they do a video, people think you don't know who they are, you don't know who trained them,
Right.
you don't know where they learned, you have no credit, you don't know who their family is, you don't know what kind of father, what kind of, what kind of husband they are. And okay, they're credible because they put a video for 10 minutes.
Right.
You know, it's like, listen, we have to be accountable what we say.
That's right.
This is not, I mean, you don't understand the amount of hours that I have to study to do a 1 hour teaching. And even then, it's scared the living daylights out of me. I don't want to ruin people. I don't want to try to deceive people. And I have to make sure that if I do something wrong, I'll be quick to react. Hey, man, I messed up. I'm so sorry. And it's hard. The ego gets bruised quickly, man. I don't like it. So I try to make sure that I verify stuff. Always with an open door to know that we can fix and we can make it better, okay? Now, Leviticus, the whole book of Leviticus. It's about the offerings. It's about how to approach the Creator. First and Second Chronicles talk about the temple. The whole book of Ezra, chapters 3 to 6. The whole Psalms is about the temple and worship. Ezekiel, chapters 40 to 47. The book of Haggai. Malachi. Luke, chapters 1 and 2. Acts, chapters 1 and 2. And chapters 21 and 22. The whole book of Hebrews. And also the book of Revelation. And I'm sure I left a whole bunch of, a book of Isaiah that has temple language in it. So how many chapters in the Bible deals with temple? That's a lot, right?
Yeah.
So I submit to you to consider looking into this so we learn about the Lord, the house of God, the house of Yah. Okay? All right. So let me show you now what I'm trying to come to show you temple order. Everybody had a job. In temple administration and service, this is the temple administration and service by Joseph Jacobs, Judah David Eisenstein. Well, they did. They narrowed down because the Mishnah. And by the way, the Mishnah, you don't need to be afraid of it. It's case law. What Mishnah is the arguments of the rabbis and not the rabbis of the great assembly as to how to interpret the laws concerning temple and everyday life in Israel. The Gemara is the arguments and opinions of the rabbis to the Mishnah. Now the Torah, the Mishnah. Is that making sense? When I learned this, everything made more sense, okay? So, today when you talk to an Orthodox, 90% of the time, not all of them, but 90% of the time, they are arguing with you about the Gemara and the interpretation of the rabbis in regards to a tradition or whatever. Okay? So you read something in Talmud, it's kind of crazy because you read something in Talmud, right? And I know many people don't even want to touch it. But I've read it. And when I read some of the things, it's really funny because I'm appalled by some of the arguments some of these rabbis come up with. Well, it's like they're smoking crack or something. There's something weird. But then when you start reading the whole thing, the whole tractate, at the end, another rabbi goes, I don't agree with that guy. He's nuts. It's like they're having a huge argument about something that they're trying to adapt to their everyday life. So I don't follow the Gemara. And that's just opinions. I don't follow that. But however, I read the Mishnah because in the Mishnah we have a primary source. His name is Eliezer ben Yaakov. Eliezer ben Yaakov was a contemporary with Josephus and Paul and James. He was a priest in the first century, who wrote it down, how things happen in the temple. Very important. That's a primary source. Josephus is a primary source. He was there. When you read Josephus in Antiquities of the Jews and Jewish Wars, there are times when, for example, watch this. This is off the subject, but I want to bring up so you understand what I mean. There are times when you understand the temple geography. Right here. Okay, my teacher told me, okay, Rico, I want you to open Jewish Wars, go to this and there and read this. So I read it. Okay. And then he says, go to this older book of Josephus, Antiquities of the Jews, read this and this. It's about the same platform. That's about this area right here. This area right here. You notice the different levels, right? This to there, there to there. So when I read it in one book of Josephus, it sounds like a mistake because the measurements are different. But if you understand the temple and the geography, and this is not relevant to you today, I just want to give you an example of how not understanding the house leads us to say Josephus made a mistake. Well, Josephus was a priest. He was a priest, so he had access there. Okay, but because thank God I was trained about the geography of the temple, I told my teacher, well, when Josephus was speaking in one book, he's standing on the platform here, on the northwest corner, looking south. On the other side, Josephus is standing on the lower level here, looking north. So it looks like a different level. Now, Josephus is not wrong, but Josephus is not thinking about us in the 21st century in Arizona. He's writing to people who saw the temple, who were there. You understand? So if he's writing to the Israelites, a male Israelite can go into this area right here, right in here, right in this area. So a male Israelite, a Levite there, and a male Israelite in this area. So a male Israelite can go in there. He would have understood if they would have read Josephus. Oh yeah, I understand. I know what that is. But we don't know. It's just like I don't know what chulo, right? Is that what you have? Right. Chulo. I remember what chulo is like pretty in Spanish, Or a chulo from Mexico, you know, in California, called the chulo. Or cholo, right?
Cholo.
Cholo was the Mexican gangs in California. Cholo, you know. So when you said cholo, I said, oh, okay. You belong to a gang? Gang of war. All right. So now we're going to talk about the order of the temple. And I'm going to show you that if we follow the temple perspective of order, then we'll understand why we have problems. The temple was a huge administration building. It was huge. It was a bank, as a matter of fact. Have you ever considered the temple as a bank?
No.
It was the bank. Because no one would dare to steal from God's. In this case, the God of Israel. That's why in the ancient America, in the beginning, they had all the banks that had like columns in the front looked like temples.
Yes.
Okay, that's why. I went to the Parthenon in Greece. It was a bank. When you read ancient Near East, all the temples, Marduk and Enki, they're all banks. Because no one will dare steal from the holy areas. You follow? They will be cursed. It's like the pyramids. If you go and ransack it, they put curses supposedly anyway. So that was a huge building. Let me show you something here. It's interesting. You see this building here? 23 stories high. 23 stories high. These side buildings were about 13, 14 stories high. These were all buildings solely for the function of that big building and the area of the priest. So you had, it's a huge enterprise. Talk about the amount of jobs that you can provide there. It was a bank. It has a treasury. This building over here is called Beilos Rot, this one. That was the headquarters for the Levitical guard. The priests sleep right over here. The Sanhedrin would meet over here. In other words, everything had purpose, had order. So what they did, they began to put families of priests and Levites to take care of the whole enterprise. Because I read it from Numbers 18. The priests were taking and helping to do everything else. Okay? Clearly, the book of Exodus, when it talks Numbers, when they're in the wilderness, they have a smaller building, which is the tabernacle. When they go to the temple of Solomon, they don't have as many people working. The buildings were not all the same sizes because there was not a huge population explosion. You know, but after they came back from Persia and Babylon, then they kept expanding. The city kept expanding. Okay, so now they have a lot more people. So that means jobs. So there was a certain amount of area, radius from the temple. Almost all the farms, and I think it's 12 mile, I think it is. I can't remember, so don't quote me on this. But it had to have a certain radius around the temple. The farms belong to the temple. So that's important to know. Because then when we know Yeshua is being, his birth, when he's being born, you notice there were shepherds, right? Those were the shepherds who were Levites taking care of the temple flock.
Yes.
That's why the word spread in the temple. They already knew about Messiah being born in the temple. Okay? So the whole episode is not just shepherds. There were specific shepherds. I know what that field is. You know, when you start going towards Bethlehem, it's so what the Bible tells you. You know? Alright, so the affairs of the second temple were managed by a board of 15 appointed officers. The Mishnah records the following names of officers of the temple without stating their respective periods of activity. But it is presumed that there were those appointed in the time of Agrippa. So it's showing you the historical accounts of how they worked in the temple. Okay? This is very important information. Because we never consider the temple as a place of work. It's only worship.
Right.
But they had a huge, they needed farms, they needed grain, they needed oil, they needed wine, they needed all kinds of stuff. Frankincense. So what do? You need to have farms, you need to have shepherds, you need to have growers. I mean, it's a huge dynamic that's going on there. So the reason why I'm showing you this is because in the house of the Lord, there's order. People call themselves a temple and they have no order.
Right.
Because we don't understand the foundation.
Right.
So, Yohanan ben Pinehas was in charge of the seals given in exchange for money to purchase sacrifices. So you got to Jerusalem, and then you needed to buy a korban, an offering. Or you could bring your money from your country, but you cannot use that money in the temple because it had images of other gods.
That's right.
So you needed money changers. You need the money exchange. That was acceptable. The reason why this is important is because the Bible talks about this when Yeshua turned over the tables.
Right.
He is not against the temple functions, he is against the temple corruption. Because they used to charge an extra tax for the people when they were paying the half shekel. So they are making money of the people instead of facilitating for the people to come before the Creator. You follow?
That's right.
And that's corruption. When Yeshua turned over the tables, he quoted what? You're making the house of my Father a den of thieves. What is he quoting you there? He's quoting Jeremiah chapter 7. Verse 1 through 11, it tells you about the corruption and how the Lord is going to remove himself from Israel if they become corrupt. So Yeshua is not against the temple. That is a false narrative from the systems of religion that don't study the temple functions.
That's right. That's right.
Okay? Second, Ayihah, libations. So we have one family, by the way. The family of Ahiyah, they were in charge of all the libations of the temple. If they wanted to do this, the purchase the money and the exchange and the seals, they couldn't have done that. Their job from the time they're born is to do that job. That's it. Okay? They had a purpose, they had a role, even from their mother's womb. They were trained for that. Okay? Matatiyah ben Samuel for the allotments or the lots for the selection of the priests every day. And that's important. Why? Because Luke chapter 1 tells us when Zechariah went according to his service, he went in and they cast lots. Well, now you know who was the family who was casting the lots. You can put a name to the people of that event in the Bible. Oh, but I don't follow anything that's in Scripture. Well, how in the world do you know who was the guy doing the lots?
Yes.
We have the evidence. Why not look into it? Like ancient Near East. I study ancient Near East. I even went to college to finish my degree on it. It was so overwhelming and changed my whole life. Let me ask you a question. You know what they believe in the ancient world? Have you ever noticed that women were not allowed in the temple?
Right.
In the certain areas of the temple?
Right.
You know why? This is important. Because in the ancient world they had temple prostitutions and priestesses. Right? So the God of Israel says, no, you're not going to worship me the way the Canaanites and the Egyptians do. So the women are not allowed to go beyond a point. So the nations will not say that the God of Israel, Yahweh, has women prostitutes in the temple. They used to do the service in silence. Why? Because they used to do divination in ancient temples. They did it for the worship of Athena, the worship of the gods of Rome and things like that. So they did it in silence. They put all the entrails on the altar. Why? Because in Egypt, they used to read the liver. Based on the texture and the color, they used to read liver from prophecies and things. God says, no, all the entrails on the altar. No one ever says that we do divination here.
Amen.
They don't put honey on any of the sacrifices. Why? Because honey was mainly used for the offering of Moloch. They wouldn't do any of the sacrifices or the offerings at night. Because only the underworld deities were worshipped at night.
Yeah.
Only the Passover was eaten at night, but none of them was ever slaughtered at night.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Yes.
It explains things a little bit better. I mean, they used to believe that women who have their menstrual cycle in the ancient world, they were having sex with evil spirits. They used to believe if black mold happened to come in this house right here, that it was the demons trying to kill you.
Yes.
They believe that. They believe that if a man had a seminal discharge in the middle of the night, he was having sex with evil spirits. And the Lord tells Moses, Moses, tell Israel, just wash it. Just wash it. No demons, just wash it. He's demystifying Israel.
Amen.
He's taking all the myth from all the years of idolatry in Egypt, saying, don't believe the nonsense, just wash it, man. If it goes back, cut it off. Goes back, destroy it. Well, hasn't science proved that now? Right? If you have black mold in your house, and it's serious, you gotta vacate.
That's right. He's out.
But we read the Bible, we see the Bible, we see those things that are said, don't do, don't do, don't do, and you have no idea why not. Well, if it's not in the Bible, I'm not going to read it. Well, guess what? The explanation is not in the Bible because the Bible is not written to us. It was written to that audience. But we still got black mold. There's still seminal discharge. There's still some menstrual cycles. So Israel's supposed to live in a world of reality.
Amen.
Grounded on truth, not on myth, and all scary by everything else around. Okay? Alright. So, we have next. We have Pethahiah, those names are kind of... The nest of fowls. They were in charge of all the offerings of doves and things like that. Then you have Benahiyah, the health department. treating especially disease of the bowels caused by bare feet touching the cold marble pavement. There was a doctor in the temple. Why do you need doctors? Because they would eat more meat in that 1 week they worship, they service than all year. You don't eat meat like the way we do now.
Right.
Back then you only ate it during the high holidays or something like that.
Right.
Imagine if you had like 50 sheep and you're eating meat every week. You're not going to have a flock in 2 years. Then you have Nahunya of the digging of wells. Oh, interesting. It says, for the pilgrims on the highways leading to Jerusalem. And also in charge of the water source on the Temple Mount, which is like 36 cisterns. You know, plus a fixed well. Do you know there was a fixed well in this building right here? It's called the pomegranate. The Muslims called it the well of the pomegranate in their own language. Underneath this building right here, on the second floor of this building, there was the mugni. It's a wheel. They used to turn it on every morning when they would do the service before the offering. They wash their hands. And the Mishnah tells you there was a fixed well underneath that building about 50 feet. Khan Rashik and Charles Warren, they went in and they actually surveyed that cistern. It's number 28. Ezekiel, this is important. You know why it's important? Ezekiel 47 verse 1 tells us. This is exactly what that is.
Is it a cistern or a well?
It's a well that became a cistern now. Okay?
Okay, so it's all stopped up now.
No, there's actually some still in use. Like there's one right over here.
I mean, they're using it for a cistern, but it doesn't have a fresh...
No, they're not using, that's right. They're not using the water for that anymore. Okay, so. Ben Arza, I'm sorry, Ben Babi, that's a weird name. This one. The temple, Gavini, temple crier. Have you heard of the cockroach?
Yeah.
That's the guy. It's not a chicken.
Right.
Right? It was actually a family of priests who were in charge to call off the service in the morning around the time when the chickens crow. But there were no chickens inside the city of Jerusalem. They believed that the droppings of the chicken can cause the animals to get sick. It's called like bird flu. You know, they call that now. But back then, they were not allowed inside the city because they're afraid of defilement. You follow? In the sense that if a cattle, anyway, so you get it. It says, Ben Gevel of the gates, the opening and the closing. Then you have Ben Babi, the wicks of the candlestick, the menorah. Ben Arsa of the cymbals, leading the music of the Levites. Hugras, Ben Levi, the musical instrument. Makes sense. Ben Levi, son of Levi, musician. That follows biblical protocol. That's exactly what he read in Numbers chapters 18, that they take care of the things not associated with the altar and the holy things. And the music was in charge of the Levites. You see? So that piece of information lines up with Scripture.
Amen.
Okay? So we cannot reject this stuff. Are we learning some things new today?
Amen.
But what I see here is perfect order in God's house. This is why I'm learning to structure my ministry that the Father's given me using a lot of these principles. I have people that work with us and others to help us. And what I do, I find their gifts and I empower them on those gifts and I try to facilitate for them. I have like 10 students in English and I have 20 in Spanish that are directly studying with me now. So they don't have resources, I share with them. They need a platform, I let them teach with me. You know, the whole idea is to help one another. You know, this is not a one-man show. Can one family do everything? Right? No, the Lord set it up so that everything was perfect and in order. So now the high priest doesn't have to worry about who's doing the lots today. Or no, that's micromanaging. You know, the Lord gave us responsibility to know. He gave us everyone gifts. Every single one of them. But if we don't ask, what is our gift? Then we're always going to be messing up with somebody else's gift. And they get offended. And then we have a chaos in the body. And that's what's happening today.
Sure.
Especially with social media. With social media, anyone can be a teacher. And we're not responsible enough to keep them accountable. And I'm guilty of this. We don't keep them accountable. Oh, it sounded great. Sounded logical, so I like that. I'm going to believe it. We don't know the research. We don't know his resources. We don't know if he actually did the research himself.
Right.
Because of the whole temple debacle right now with the city of David, 2 years straight, I went with my teacher, and I went there to do archaeological findings and geographical, topographical things. And we're still looking for more information. You know, and I could only go based on the evidence. We talked to Eilat Mazar, which is the granddaughter of Benjamin Mazar, the leading authority of archaeological findings. She's the one who found the city of David and the palace of David. I asked her, did you ever find any evidence of the temple in the city of David? No. She's the one who dug it. No, the evidence does not line up. Well, did you find the evidence in the Ophel? No. So I only have to believe the evidence. The Bible tells me, the evidence follows it. You know, so therefore, if you want to believe something else, good luck, but I got to follow the evidence. You know, so I cannot go on a direction on hearsay and lack of scholarship based on somebody's idea. As a matter of fact, I asked her, I said, have you ever heard of Mr. Ernest Martin? I said, yeah, nice man. Because he was working with, as a volunteer with her grandfather, Benjamin Mazar. You know, and she says, and he presented to me and my grandfather his theory of the city of David. And we told him, the evidence does not stand with your thesis. The two leading authorities, between them, they have like 70 years of experience. So what do you do with that? The people who've been on the ground digging, that are experts on the locations tell you it's not lining up. Everybody tells you, he writes a book, people run with it.
Right.
I mean, so what I did, instead of arguing with people, let me go do the research myself. So I read his book, I read the other guy's book, and then I went and looked at the evidence. And trying in a neutral way, say, okay, they say this, let's see if the evidence lines up with it. No, okay, I don't believe that. I'm not going to bash them for that all the time. This is the evidence I found. So I focused on that. I just teach on the evidence. But people want to fight all the time. They want to argue. Because we want to be right, but we're messing with the house of God.
That's right.
It's holy. It's a blueprint. You're not supposed to change it. And therefore, so I focus on that. You know, and go from there. Alright? So then we have Galmu family, which is a preparation of the showbread. The Aptinas family, the incense. Eleazar, the curtains. And Pinchas, the vestments, and also some of the other stuff that he did for the priests. So as you can see, there was perfect order in the temple. And I'm almost done. We have 7 trustees. They're called Amorkelim. And 3 cashiers, Gizbanim, had charge of the temple treasury. So you can see that everything was orderly. Everybody had a job. Now, mind you, each family had hundreds of people. It's not just one person. He was the leader. They had a whole bunch of people working towards facilitating for that job to be done. So you can only imagine how many hundreds and thousands of people were working in the temple. Not inside, but in the adjacent buildings to make it work daily, to clean it, the guard, you know. In the courts were 13 contribution boxes in the shape of shofarim. So all the shofars were narrow necks and broad bases. That shekalim, the Mishnah talks about how they used to collect the half shekel, which is a commandment. It's in the Torah. But we don't know when they're collected, do we? The Torah doesn't tell us when, does it? But it tells you when they did it in the temple, right before Passover, before Shavuot, and before Tabernacles. Now, Yeshua comes in during the time when they are collecting the half shekel. But we don't know when, do we? Yes, we do, because if we follow the story, he's doing it in the month of Adar, this month. Because on the first of the month of Adar, they used to take the money changers through all the cities of Jerusalem. On the 15th of the month, they put them in Jerusalem. Right? So we know now, we can narrow down more or less when Yeshua was in the temple turning over the tables, if we understand the times and seasons and the temple.
Amen. Amen.
Only one amen. Hallelujah. Okay. Give me one, at least a courtesy one once in a while. All right. The half shekel contribution for public sacrifices, the half shekel. And by the way, this is really important, because the half shekel in the book of, I can't remember what it is now, but in Leviticus, it says that it will make atonement for your souls.
Right.
Well, how can a half a shekel do that? Makes no sense. That puzzled me for years, until I recognized that in the dispersion, people in the Roman Empire, I was reading this book about imperial cult and the rights of Jewish people in the imperial Rome. And what they talked about was that during the time of Augustus Caesar, he rendered rights to the Jewish people in the empire. Okay, they had kosher meat market in the Agora, which is the meat market. They can work. They can do collegia, which is like a meeting group, like the way we are. If we were doing this during the Roman Empire without permission, we will all go to jail, like modern day China.
Right.
Okay, it's imperial China. Okay, back then the Jews had permission from the government to have synagogues. So you can go. You have permission to wear either talit or whatever in the synagogue. Not outside, in the synagogue. Because outside, if you cover your head outside, during the Roman Empire, they would assume you're worshiping Rome, the Caesar, because of imperial worship. Okay? So what happens is, they also allow, the Roman Empire allow the Jews in the dispersion to pay the half shekel. Now, remember that back in the first century, not everybody can go up to Jerusalem, although it's a command. But if you live in Babylon, if you live in Persia, if you live in Assyria, if you live in Egypt, it's not like today you can catch a plane and be there right away. Back then, it was a journey. It takes you a month to get there. You know, and then you're not going to go and leave the next day. So if you showed up for Passover, you don't leave until after Pentecost.
That's right.
You know? So what happens is that now, the half shekel was a way to count you in as a community. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
So if I send a half shekel with a community, they send a representative of the community. So let's say James is the representative of this community. We all pay a half shekel, we give it to him. He takes an oath that he's going to take that to the temple. Now, in the name, using the name of God, he cannot break that. Because then he's using the name of God in vain, because he took it in an oath. Then he will take it to the temple, and then when they count the shekel, it's as if you were there. And then that would include you in the daily sacrifices that was for the whole community.
Oh,
You see what I mean? So it will cover you even though you're far away.
that's awesome.
You see what I mean?
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So Yeshua being our offering, even though we were not there,
Right.
it's as if we were there. You follow?
Yeah.
It's taking that principle. All right. And there was a special room called Lishkat HaShahim, secret chamber for the anonymous donations, out of which fund the worthy poor were supported. Okay. And lastly, I'm going to cover set 5. Into the vessel chamber, the people threw donations of silver and gold vessels. Every 30 days, this chamber was opened by the cashier, who selected such vessels as could be utilized in the temple, and the rest sold, and the proceeds applied to the fund for repairing the temple buildings. Okay, so this was a huge deal. Maintenance, exactly. You have to keep it running. Are you getting the picture of what I'm trying to show you here?
Yes.
How come there's perfect order in the house of God and there's chaos in our lives? We don't study the house, we don't understand His order. You know? The priestly officials were the high priest, his deputy, Sagan, the Sagan, and his 2 attendants, the Catholic, and I think the word Catholic came from that maybe, I don't know. Lastly, I'm going to cover this, and this always opens a can of worms. Okay?
Oh, the calendar.
And I'd like to have the opportunity to share it, and then we can open for questions. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I'm only going to present the information, but I'm going to back it up with some scripture so you can see a contrast. Okay? You don't have to agree with it. I just want to give you the information. Then you weigh it out. All right. The Mishnah tells us, and by the way, these are based on the temple functions. This is not an invention of the Jews. You have to eliminate out of your mind, it's not true. I used to teach that, I was wrong. Okay? The first of Nisan, and this is going to be kind of confusing, but let's go through this real quickly before I read. The first of Nisan is the religious calendar. Okay? Tishri is the 7th month of the religious calendar. But Tishri is the first month of the civil year. Now you say, well, why do we need a civil year? Because we count in the Jubilees and the sabbatical years. Where in the Bible do you count the sabbatical years and the Jubilee from the month of Nisan? Where do we find anywhere in the New Testament or the Bible counting the Jubilees from Nisan? Nowhere, right? So when do we know when Messiah is going to come then? He's coming on the Jubilee. Matthew 24 verse 30 to 33 is Yom Kippur language. So the Tishri becomes the first month of the civil calendar, and Nisan becomes the 7th month of the civil calendar. Keep that in mind. All right. Number 1, Nisan, the first of Nisan What's, oh, by the way, sorry, if you don't like the word Nisan, I use Aviv. The word Nisan is from Babylon. Ooh, Aviv is Canaanite. No, I'm seriously, people say, oh, that comes from Babylon. Then don't use Aviv either. Then don't use Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Or January, February. You can't use any of that stuff. You can't drive a Mazda. You can't wear Nike. You know, no one is worshiping these things.
Amen.
It's only idolatry when you give attributes of a divine.
Amen.
I mean, this is just a pointer. But if I break it,
You got it.
You did not take care of something.
if I break it and I use this as a method of worship and I attribute this any kind of divine powers, then you're not to use this. You follow? All right. The first of Nisan for reckonings or reigns of Jewish kings. How many of you did not know that? The way they count the years. For example, you know the president, he was elected in November. But he's the president-elect into January 20th.
Right.
Then you count his 4 years from January 20th.
Right.
Right? Even though the next president, or hopefully he will be re-elected in November of 2020, but if he loses, the new president doesn't take over until January 20th. You follow? Okay, so you can be elected on the in November, but start. Okay, so back then, if a king was enthroned or he was put on the throne on December, from December to Nisan, that will be 1 year. Yes?
Even though it's
Okay.
3 months, what you're saying.
Huh?
Even though it's 3 months.
Right, but it's already a year.
But it's big.
Right. Okay, and it also established, and this is an important part here, it established and establishing the order of the festivals. Now remember, now it's going to get kind of tricky. Because Nisan is the first of the year in regards to the agricultural cycle.
That's right.
And then Sukkot is the last month for the agricultural cycle, but it's not the last month of the year. Look, because if we go by Nisan first, second, third, here, but then that's not the end of the year. You got to go all the way to Adar. So, but this is the end of the agricultural cycle. After that, you have the harvesting or whatever, later to seed or whatever, winter, and then come back again, the latter rains. Yes, that's important.
Yeah.
Listen, I did not understand this for the last 7 years. I used to argue with people. No, that Rosh Hashanah, no, and this Nisan. And then when I decided to really study the temple, my teacher sat me down. He didn't argue with me. He says, let's look at the evidence. Let's look at this. He started going through the whole thing and go, okay. I just did not understand the function of the dates. I was so desperately looking for everything to be pagan that I missed that everything has a function. Tishri has a function. Now, I'm going to show you some evidence in a minute. Now, number 2, the first of Elul, which is the month leading towards Tishri, is for tithing animals. Well, why is this important? Because the Torah tells us that the animals have certain time period before they're acceptable on the altar.
That's right.
The lamb of the first year, of 3 year, or whatever. So how would you know when to count from? Now the Torah does not tell you anywhere which month to start counting.
No.
Who determined this? The Sanhedrin Council, who were priests and who were Levites. They say, okay guys, we have to determine when do we start counting these things, because the Torah tells us and commands us. We have a feast in tabernacles, so we need to make sure everything's ready by then. So they picked it between them, Nisan and tabernacles. So this was selected by the Sanhedrin Council, which is the judicial body, and the ones who made the decree on this were the priests who had the legal authority according to Numbers 18 in regards to this. You follow?
That's right.
Okay. 3. The first of Tishri for agriculture, sabbatical, and jubilee years. Yom Teruah means the trumpet, the sound of the trumpet, right?
Right.
That's an enthronement ceremony. That's when you enthrone the king.
That's right.
Correct?
Yes.
But that does not take away from the function of the head of the year, which head of the year means Rosh Hashanah. It's not an evil word. The only problem I have today in Israel with Rosh Hashanah is the way they celebrate it, like the nations celebrate their first of the year. That's my issue.
Right.
If they say, hey, Happy New Year in regards to the counting of the years from creation, great. But they throw a party like the nations, and they do all kinds of abominations like the nations.
Yes.
I got an issue with that. That was not the purpose of Tishri 1. You follow?
Yes.
So Yom Teruah serves a purpose and a function. Sound of the trumpets. King is here. He's going to be enthroned because judgment is coming in 10
Amen.
days.
That's right.
Amen.
But then when the Jubilee comes, notice, the first of the year, have you ever wondered why the new calendar for study of the Bible starts after Tabernacles?
Feast of Tabernacles.
You know the cycles of the Torah?
Yes, yes, yes.
You know the cycle of the Torah, right?
Yes.
Genesis does not start until after Tabernacles.
That's right.
Now the Tishri 1. Well, wait a minute, I don't understand. Tishri 1 is the first of the year. How come you don't start the new cycle of the Torah reading until after Tabernacles? By the way, did you know that Passover is not over until Pentecost?
Right.
They count the days.
Right.
Counting
You count.
the
Oh, you have
Counting
7.
the Omer.
Right. You count the Omer.
Yes.
So it's a long feast. So you start Passover is the day that then you have unleavened bread. Why 7 days?
Right.
I mean, no other day in the year, no other. You're allowed to eat bread all you want.
Right.
In the temple, you only make leavened bread for Pentecost, 2 big loaves. You're not bringing it inside the temple, but you can put it outside. The only time, okay? But why 7 days on unleavened bread? Why 7? Have you ever heard of the Egyptian bread offerings during the time of the spring for the fertility rituals?
Yes. Rome did that too.
Yeah. They used to do bread offerings. They did in the spring. If they didn't have the animal to offer, they had bread offerings with leaven for fertility rituals. God says, don't worship me the way the Gentiles and the way the Egyptians and the Canaanites. Right? We have to go back to culture, guys. The Bible is not written to us. Remember, it's for us, but it's not to us.
I like that.
Okay, so now we have Tishri first. Passing judgment of humankind, which is Yom Kippur, and marking the anniversary of the creation of the world. We know that in the full feast, or the full days, or the holidays, is when Messiah is going to return, right? So he's coming on the Jubilee, correct?
That's right.
So therefore, how come we don't count the Jubilees from the right time? And it's after Yom Kippur, so that means that from Tishri 1 into the last day of Pentecost, of Tabernacles, is one long feast. The end of the agriculture year, and the Bible tells you to, by the way, when you look at Leviticus 23, it talks about Tabernacles, it says the end of the year. What year? The agricultural year.
Right.
It deals with temple function.
Right.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so, right, great, Rico. So you think you're right on this. Show me the evidence. Okay, here we go. Matthew 24. Can somebody read for me, please? Anywhere? It's right here.
That's what's on the screen.
It's right here.
But about that day and hour no one knows, neither the angels of heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. For as the days of Noah were, so will be the coming of the Son of Man.
So Yeshua told us a very important prophecy to look for this prophecy. But we're not aware of calendars because we have it between our eyes that only Nisan is the one that counts. Let me ask you a question. When was the Nisan calendar established?
Egypt, when they came up.
Egypt.
Egypt.
So what happened in creation then? How were they able to have some kind of reckoning of time from creation into Egypt? 400 years from the time he made covenant. Okay? Alright, so watch this. Let's take you with the biblical evidence. People want the Bible, here it is. It says, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month. Okay, which month is that? Which month is that? Iyar or Cheshvan? See, notice that it's not telling you, it's not even giving you the name of it. Why? Because we are not the audience he's targeting. They all knew this stuff. I mean, trust me, when we get to the kingdom and we see Moses, we're going to say, Todah Rabba Achi, thank you so much, my brother. You know, I learned Torah from you. And he's going to say, who are you? Are you an Israelite? Well, no, I'm from Puerto Rico. From Puerto Rico. What? You know, he says, what are you doing reading Torah? I give it to Israel. You know what I mean? You follow? He's going to figure out how, a cell phone, what in the world is that? You know, technology. So watch this. On the day of all the fountains of great deep burst forth. Okay, it's not telling you the month. But you got to understand that the Nisan calendar for the feast were established when they came out of Egypt. So how they keep a reckoning of time before that? Tishri. Talk to an Orthodox, they tell you it's from Tishri. They're not crazy. They're actually right. In this sense, they're actually right. We have to learn to give them credit when they're right, like I give credit to Christians when they're right. We can't have it both ways. We can't be so wounded and hurt all the time. You know this whole whining thing about we're hurt, let it go. He brought us out of Christianity. We have been delivered.
Amen.
We were wounded. It's like having a bad relationship and then we choose the wrong partners and then when the right one comes along, we are so wounded we don't even see it.
That's right.
We can't even function. We sabotage the relationship until we lose it. Many people are going to Judaism, many people are going back to church because we are being very responsible. We continue to complain about all the hurts. Yes, let us get over it. I've been wounded, I've been hurt. I'm in ministry. I'm in the front trench. I'm in the trenches all the time. When you guys got group stuff and you complain about the group stuff, which you are able to, I get it nationally and worldwide, every day, constantly. You know, and then we have these young guys that come in, they want to be teachers. When things get difficult, they go running back and they quit.
Yep.
And then they leave us hanging. Oh, it's worse now. They come in and they do all the conspiracy stuff, all the shape of the earth stuff, all the crazy thing, and now they start bashing on us because we don't get on their horse. I'm not called to teach that.
Right.
I'm doing my thing.
That's right.
If that's what you're called to teach, good luck. But don't be minimizing me and then throw me in the dirt and just, they learn from us when they start and then they bash us when they think they know everything.
That's right.
Amen.
That's right.
That's sad.
That's right.
That's stepping on your own teachers. Listen, I learned one thing. I have a martial arts teacher that taught me 24 years ago. He did an incredible job teaching me. Me and him were no longer friends. I don't want to be his friend. Well, he was a great teacher, and I'm always grateful for what he taught me. And I'm never going to diminish him as a teacher. As a friend, he's no longer my friend. You know, but as a teacher, he was amazing. I value my teachers, whether I like them or not. We no longer value our teachers. We spit on them when we no longer need them. And you know what that sounds like? Typical Christianity.
That's right.
That's what we learn over there. Oh, you don't like this pastor? Go to the one in the corner over there.
Yeah.
They have the whole ministry that you can go into.
Yeah.
And then when you get tired of him, go to the one on the far there. It's like 20 churches down one street.
Yep.
You know, no, we're supposed to belong to the kingdom of God. Ladies and gentlemen, please consider our ways. Let's go back to the house. Let the house lead us to understand His order. What is holy, what is not, His times and seasons.
Amen.
If not, we're going to continue to create havoc and chaos. How many variations of the name do we have now?
Test that which is holy.
Right.
And test it towards the scriptures that the Father has given us.
Yeah. How many variations of the name we have?
Brings division.
Way too many, right? But let me ask you a question. What is the protocol in the temple when they heard the name? This is the protocol of the temple. Every time they heard the name, what did everybody do? If we use the name and we don't know that, then be careful how you use the name.
Right.
Because the Psalm says that you should ascribe greatness to His name.
Yes.
And that's why in the temple, every time they heard the name, they hit the deck and they say, blessed be His name and His kingdom forever and ever. That's the ultimate way to render honor to the name when you hear it.
Baruch Hashem.
We want to pronounce the name, but we don't know the protocol of how to respect it. And by the way, when you use it, when you go to the bathroom, you just shamed it. Had this lady, she sent me soaps. Goat's milk soap, thank you. But she put the letters of the name of God in it.
Oh, wow.
And I called, listen,
We don't,
I appreciate the gift, but I can't use it.
can't use it in the bathroom.
Why? But you know, the name of the Lord has power. Lady, I told her this. Are you out of your mind? You want me to wash my private parts with the name of God? I told her straight, I just lost it. Are you crazy? Are you so desperately wanting to use the name that now you want me to wash my private parts? She got really mad at me because I refused to use her soap. I mean, that's no wonder the Messianics don't want to deal with us. They got their problems too.
Yes.
No wonder the Orthodox don't want to deal with us.
Right.
They see us, we want to do whatever we want. Listen, I know that we want to learn. I know that our zeal and our desires to do the right thing. And we're working with what we know. But there are some things that you don't touch. There are certain things that are too holy for us to mess with. And we don't know the difference. And ignorance can only guide you so far. So I don't understand ignorance in Africa. When a buddy of mine was just there in Uganda, and he was telling me one guy, his whole life, He's never owned a Bible. He's like 18 years old. He loves scripture. And my buddy took a picture of the Bible he's been reading for the last 10 years. And I cannot believe that this guy was reading this Bible. The guy was telling me that this kid loved the scriptures. Broke my heart. I have like 15 in my house.
Right.
So we send them money to buy them the all people, Bibles. No, it's impossible. We have so many. And we have all the tools available, and we keep changing things according to their own way.
Right.
And the excuse that the Jews are doing everything wrong eventually is going to wear out. They've been doing it 3,700 years. And they're still around to bear testimony. Now, with all due respect, I don't agree with the religion. There are many things that bother me in the religion and their traditions. But I've been in Israel 14 years, 17 times in 14 years. And I'm getting to know them now. Getting to know a lot of good things and a lot of bad things. And some things I just don't subscribe to. And I tell them. Got a buddy of mine who's a rabbi. I said, sorry man, some of the stuff you're doing just don't make no sense. The Torah does not support it. And some of the rabbis even argue with you about it. So they look for the rabbi that agrees with them. Or it's just like in the Hebrew roots, well, you don't agree with Rico, well, look for Bill, look for Brad, look for Michael, look for Monty. One of them would agree with you. And then you use that agreement. I have one person go to this leader of the congregation and say, well, why don't you do this? Rico said you can do it. And I called the leader, I said, listen, that's not the context of what I say. And by the way, I do not support anybody taking any of my teachings to create havoc in your community.
Amen.
I will never do that. Because that's not the right. And I called the person, I said, do me a favor. If you're going to use some of my teachings to learn from them. But don't go to your congregation and create havoc.
Right.
When the leader doesn't know me, he doesn't know who I am, he doesn't know the context, and then it's going to create more problems for me, and you're going to be dividing his congregation.
Right.
And that's not ethical. That's not the right way of doing things.
Right.
We have to be accountable. Is that making sense?
Amen.
All right, so watch. I got off topic here, I'm sorry. It's a rant. It's a rant.
It's good.
Genesis 8:4. In the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month. Which month is that?
Who cares?
Nisan, right? What day was it? 17th. What happened in history on the 17th day?
Well, we had the 14th, 15th, and 17th day, Christ was resurrected.
Messiah resurrected.
That's right.
So here we have the ark,
Wow.
right? Not using the Nisan calendar. But Yeshua gave us a clue. Just as the sign of Noah.
Wow.
If we don't know the function of both calendars, we're not going to see the prophetic picture. There's chaos on the earth with a flood. God brings a great tribulation, the flood. There's an ark, a microcosm of the temple. Noah means rest.
Yes. Yes.
Rest means kingship, ruleship, ownership. That's why Shabbat is rest. Right? So now when Noah landed on a mountain, the waters in the sea, the waters of dry land, they dry, right? They separate, correct? Just like in creation. God brought from chaos, tohu vavohu, to order, function. The ark rests on a mountain, cosmic mountain. The waters and the dry land, right? On the flood, on Egypt, when they come out of Egypt, they go from chaos, from disorder, from death, from idolatry. They go to the Red Sea, and it says that a strong wind came and separated the waters from the earth.
Yeah.
That is a new creation motif in the Bible. New creation. The waters represent chaos. That's why in the book of Revelation, you see the angel putting his feet on water and dry land. One of the angels, right?
Yes.
Saying that it is the God of Israel who controls the dominion of the earth. Death, chaos, and the dry land. That's why the Spirit of the Lord hovered over the waters of the sea.
Amen.
That He has control over chaos.
Right.
And they believed the way to Sheol and the hell was through the water. Okay? That's why they threw the babies in this river Nile. Okay? So now Yeshua is saying, as a son of Jonah, there was chaos. There's going to be a new creation. And Yeshua resurrects the exact same day in the history when the flood and the ark rested on the mountain.
Wow.
New creation. And what happened after he came out of the waters? He built what? An altar? And he planted a vineyard. What did Adam do? He became a gardener in God's garden in the garden in Eden, right?
Right.
When Yeshua resurrected, Miriam thought he was a what? A gardener. New creation. But if we don't understand the calendars, we're not going to see this. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I never saw it.
This is very important. Because if we continue to disregard stuff, we're going to miss a lot of teachings. And Yeshua, by the way, it's done in the Bible. Yeshua told me to go look at, as in the days of Noah, study it out.
Right.
But if we do not understand the function of the different calendars, we're not going to see the beauty of this. Does that take away from Nisan as being the beginning of the year for the agricultural service? Purpose? No. Does that take anything away from the head of the year counting of the Jubilees? Does that take away from Yom Teruah, the sound of the trumpets when the king is enthroned? No, it has function. Just like all the families have function in the temple. But because we don't study what? The temple, then we are remove ourselves from this understanding. Yes?
Yes.
So hopefully, I got one and I'll finish with this one. Can you read this one for me?
In the 601st year, in the first month, on the first day of the month,
What month is that?
601st year, on the first day of the first month.
First month. So that's
It can be best.
first
Let's read it
month.
slowly. Remember, we're not dealing with Nisan.
No, it's Tishrei.
What? In the 600 year, in the first month, in the first day of the month.
That would be back to
That's the first. That's Yom Teruah.
Tishri 1, which is what?
Yom Teruah.
Yom Teruah, which is what? An enthronement, a new beginning. Get it?
Oh, wow.
The waters were dry from the earth, and Noah removed the cover of the ark and looked and saw the face of the ground, and he built an altar. Hey, tabernacles, rededication of the authority of God.
Amen.
Creation all over again.
This is good.
Before they moved.
Right. Remember that the calendar for Nisan did not exist until later.
But he wanted to.
But you see how it's important that it's not an argument about calendars? I'm just showing you the importance of the functions of it. Now we have I get it. It serves a purpose. I just don't agree with the way the Jewish people celebrate it today, especially the seculars in Israel. Oh my, they do it worse than the pagans. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I have an issue with that. But I don't have an issue calling it Rosh Hashanah because it is the head of the year. It deals with a purpose, counting of the Jubilees and the sabbatical years.
That's right. Amen.
Okay?